We are on the record. The time now is 10:17. This marks the beginning of disc number 1 for the videotape deposition testimony of Mayor Stacy Link in the matter of the Town of Sykesville versus Warfield Historic Properties, LLC et al. This case is pending in the Circuit Court for Carroll County, Maryland, case number C-06-CV-23-000-249. Today's date is November the 20th, 2023. This deposition is being conducted at 189 East Main Street, Westminster, Maryland. Will all attorneys present please identify themselves and who they represent?
Timothy Maloney for the defendant's counter-plaintiffs.
Elissa Levan for the plaintiff counter-defendant.
All others want to identify themselves?
Stephen McLeaf with Warfield.
Joe Costantini, Town of Sykesville.
Those on the phone?
Roger Conley,
Okay.
C-O-N-L-E-Y.
Okay. My name is Michael Gay, and I'm with Legal Video Solutions. Our court reporter today is Alana Johnston with CRC Solomon, and will now swear in the witness.
Could you please raise your right hand?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you hereby swear under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You may proceed.
Mayor Link, good morning.
Good morning.
Would you tell us your full name and your business address?
Okay. Stacy Carol Link, and my business address is, I assume you want the townhouse's address, which I cannot recall at this time.
And
7547 Main Street, thank you.
have you ever had your deposition taken before?
No, sir?
I'm sure it's been explained to you, but what will happen today is you will be asked a series of questions. You'll be asked to respond to them under oath. If at any time you don't understand my question, just say so.
Sure.
We'll be happy to repeat it. If at any time you need a break, let me know. We'll be happy to accommodate you. It's very important for our court reporter here today that you give verbal responses to the questions as opposed to a head nod or something like that, because a transcript is being prepared what we say. Our goal here today is to try to finish this as expeditiously as possible, and so everybody can get on their way. What did you do to prepare for today's deposition, if anything, other than speak with counsel?
Nothing.
Did you review any documents?
No, sir.
Did you speak with any town employees?
No, sir.
All right, I'd like to ask you a little bit about your educational and professional background. Did you attend Cambria Heights High School in Patton, Pennsylvania?
Proudly, yes, sir.
All right, and what year did you graduate from Cambria?
Cambria Heights High School,
Yes.
1993.
All right, and then did you attend Elizabethtown College?
Indeed,
And did you obtain a degree there?
I did.
And what was that degree in?
I have a BS in occupational therapy,
All right, and what year did you obtain that degree?
1997.
All right, and did you obtain an executive certification in home modifications?
Indeed.
And what is that?
That is a certificate that I earned as a result of 6 weeks of education with the University of Southern California, virtually. And it is an executive certificate in home modifications, is as it describes. I am a assistive technology professional, and I have special training in modifications to a home environment that increases accessibility for those with disabilities.
And are you also a board-certified home inspector?
No longer, sir, no.
All right, and when were you once?
Oh, goodness, 2014 to 2016, I believe.
All right, and why did you stop being a board-certified home inspector?
I did not have time to do all of the things that I wished to do. I had a few other jobs at the time.
All right. Have you attended any graduate school?
No, sir.
Do you have any background, training, experience, or education in the field of real estate development?
None.
Do you have any background, training, experience, or education in the field of real estate finance?
None.
Or finance generally?
Outside of my own personal experiences with my own home mortgage, no, sir.
Do you have any experience in construction?
I would say at a non-professional level, yes.
All right, and what is that?
I own a historic home and have made a significant amount of renovations and restoration achievements with that structure.
Beyond that, your own home and your own structure, do you have any experience in real estate construction involving either retail or large-scale residential development?
I do not.
All right. So what did you do after college?
With respect to what, sir?
Employment.
I was hired as an occupational therapist.
And what year was that?
1997.
All right. And how long did you work as an occupational therapist?
I'm still working as an occupational therapist.
And who are you employed by?
I am currently employed by as an independent contractor for the state of Maryland.
All right. And what particular agency of the state of Maryland?
Department of Health.
What used to be known as the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene?
Correct, sir.
And what do you do for the Department of Health as an OT?
I actually perform those environmental assessments where I make use of my home modifications executive certificate.
All right. And is this a particular program in the Department of Health?
It is.
And what is that?
So it's the Medicaid waiver program.
Uh-huh.
Yep. And it's called this Community First Choice waiver program.
Are you actually a contractor of Community First Choice?
I am. No, I am a provider for the program.
All right. Did you ever work at National Seating and Mobility?
Yes, I did.
And when did you work there?
This is going to be challenging. They purchased my previous employer's company 20. I am going to say the end of the year of 2016, maybe in December.
Okay.
To the best of my recollection.
Did you then work at a successor entity after that?
No, they were the successor entity.
All right. And did you ever work for a company known as Med Incorporated?
I did.
And when did you work there?
The previous to that, to National Seating and Mobility, beginning maybe in, again, 2014. I don't know how long we were Med Inc.
So National Mobility was the successor to Med, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right.
It's National Seating and Mobility, yes, sir.
Got it. And did you ever work at Advanced Medical Concepts?
I did, prior to Med Inc.
And was that yet another predecessor to those companies?
Yes.
All right. And do you have your own PC, personal corporation, or professional corporation to perform your work as an occupational therapist?
I have an LLC.
Is that Strongest Link Home Inspections, LLC?
No, sir.
What is the name of your LLC?
Strongest Link.
All right. And are you the sole member or shareholder in Strongest Link?
Yes, sir.
All right. Is there also an entity known as Strongest Link Home Inspections, LLC?
No longer, sir.
All right. I understand it was forfeited in 2017.
That sounds right.
All right. And what work did Strongest Link Home Inspections, LLC perform?
Home inspections.
And why did you allow it to be forfeited?
Because as I had previously mentioned this morning, I stopped completing those home inspections.
All right. Did you ever serve as an historic district commissioner for the town of Sykesville?
Yes, sir.
And when was that?
I believe 2012 was when I was appointed by the mayor at the time.
And who appointed you? Which mayor?
Mike Miller.
And how long did you serve in that position?
On the Historic District Commission until I ran for and was elected to the Sykesville Town Council.
And was that in 2013 that you were elected to the council?
Indeed, sir, in May.
All right. And when did you decide to seek election as mayor of the town?
Sometime before May 4th, 2021.
All right. Is that the day you were elected?
Yes, sir.
All right. And were you sworn in shortly thereafter?
In June.
All right. And I'm going to read.
Right? June. End of May, June. I don't remember.
All right.
End of May, probably. June. I'm sorry. It was definitely June.
All right. Now I'm going to read you this number, 443-829-7509.
Correct.
Is that your telephone number?
It is.
All right. And is that a cell phone?
It is.
And is your carrier AT&T?
No, sir.
Who is your carrier?
Verizon.
All right. In the last 5 years, had you had any other cell phone number other than that one?
No, sir.
All right. And is that a cell phone number you originally got through an employer?
Yes, sir.
All right. Do you use that number in calling patients?
All the time.
Do you also use that number for your personal business?
Well, that is my personal business.
Well, I'm talking about friends, family, that kind of thing.
Yes, sir. It's the only phone number I have.
Do you also use that when talking to people about town business, constituents, and otherwise?
Yes, sir. It's the only phone number I have.
All right. So you use it for a variety of functions for your business, for friends and family, and also for the town business dealing with constituents, town staff, and others. Is that correct?
It's the only phone number I have.
All right. Do you get any reimbursement from the town for any use of the phone?
Reimbursement for the use of the phone?
Yes.
No, sir.
Has the town ever provided you with any other phone?
No, sir.
All right. Do you use the phone to text with various patients that you have?
Yes, sir.
All right. Do you also use the phone to text people in the town on town business, such as constituents, town staff, or others?
I wouldn't call it town business, but I do use the text. I use my cell phone for all communication.
All right. Do you text your constituents?
Not all. Not that I recall. Lots of phone calls.
All right. And do you ever text town staff?
I do.
All
Yes.
right. And who would that staff include?
Most often, the town manager and the clerk.
Did the town issue you an email address when either you became member of the council or you became mayor?
Most certainly.
And what is that email address?
Slink, S-L-I-N-K, at Sykesville.net.
All right. In the last 5 years, have you used any other email address other than that one?
For what purpose?
For any purpose.
Absolutely.
And what email addresses are those?
Objection.
Go ahead, you may answer.
I use my email address, my private email address, which has become linkstacy@gmail.com.
Right, how long have you had that email address?
My goodness gracious, I don't know. At least a decade.
All right, and have you used that email address to communicate with constituents, people in the town, and otherwise?
I'm sure at some point or another, yes.
All right, do you have any other email addresses?
Well, every one of those companies that you announced at the beginning asking me if they were my employer
Yes.
came with an email address.
All right, and would you use those emails for dealing with those employers and also with patients of those employers?
Absolutely.
All right, so in other words, you would try to keep your patient communications on the emails that were issued by your employers. Is that correct?
There were an occasional, I'm sure, email sent on various email platforms, whichever was accessible on my phone. But I would likely keep business-related emails with the business email address.
And is it fair to say that you would use the Gmail for matters other than patients and patient business? Is that correct, as a general rule?
As a general rule, would I use which email address?
As a general rule, you would try to keep your patient and patient business off of the Gmail.
Not like if it were patient, like confidential stuff.
Yes.
Yes, I would.
All right, that's what I'm asking.
Yes, sir.
All right. Do you operate or use any social media accounts?
Yes, sir.
All right, and what are they?
Facebook.
Okay.
And there's a Instagram page as well.
Is that Stacy linked for Sykesville?
The Instagram?
Yes.
I believe so.
Do you ever communicate with your constituents through direct messaging on either Facebook or Instagram?
Not on Instagram at all.
How about Facebook?
I am inboxed by residents on occasion, yes.
And do you respond to those inboxes?
I absolutely do.
All right. And have you communicated with constituents about the Warfield project on social media?
No, sir.
All right. Is it your testimony that you've never used social media in any way to express any statements or make any communications at all about the Warfield project?
Objection.
Go ahead, you may answer.
When you say social media, you mean like a public platform to discuss Warfield?
I'm talking about like Facebook or Instagram. Have you ever used those accounts to make statements about Warfield or communicate about Warfield?
Not that I can recall, no.
Is your testimony you've never posted anything about Warfield?
Posted anything about Warfield?
Yes.
Yes, I've posted about Warfield.
Did you post about Warfield on Facebook and Instagram?
I don't know about the Instagram. It probably got ported over. I don't know, but likely.
Are you familiar with the 2002 Disposition and Development Agreement between the town and the state of Maryland?
I'm only aware of it because of comments made by Mr. McLeaf.
Have you ever read it?
No, I have not.
Have you ever done anything to familiarize yourself with the terms and provisions of the 2002 Disposition and Development Agreement between the town and the state?
No, I've not read it.
Do you have any understanding whatsoever as to what the 2002 Disposition and Development Agreement between the town and state provides?
No, sir.
Have you ever made any effort to determine what the 2002 Development and Disposition Agreement provides?
I thought I just answered that question.
Go ahead, you may answer.
No.
Have you ever made any effort to verify the accuracy of what Mr. McLeaf said about the terms and provisions of the 2002 Disposition and Development Agreement?
I don't believe that the statements that Mr. McLeaf made about that were in need of accuracy check because he only ever referenced them. Didn't really expand upon it at all.
Do you agree that the 2002 Disposition and Development Agreement between the town and the state remains in effect today?
I have no idea.
Objection.
Have you made any effort to determine whether or not the 2002 Disposition and Development Agreement remains in effect today?
Objection. It's a legal question. Don't answer it.
Well, no. I'm asking her, has she made any effort to determine whether or not the 2002 Disposition and Development Agreement remains in effect today? That's not a legal question.
It absolutely
It
is.
inquires as to her efforts.
It absolutely is a legal question. My instruction remains.
All right, we're going to take this up with the Chambers judge right now. Let's stay on the record.
Hi, Jim.
Hi, Elise. We're here at the deposition and we're on the record, and you can be heard by everyone else. The witness has just been instructed by counsel not to ask a question as to whether she has made any efforts to determine if the 2002 Disposition and Development Agreement between the town and the state are still in effect. She's been instructed now twice not to answer. I would like you to get Judge Titus's Chambers on the telephone right now. Let them know that we have an issue in a deposition where there's been an obstruction of the deposition, and we'd like to have a telephone hearing this morning as soon as His Honor is available.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. And you can text me here on the phone so we can do that. Thank you.
All right, I will do that.
Bye.
Thanks.
I'm going to read you now some language from the Disposition and Development Agreement. Quote, in the event that the Carroll County Public Water Supply becomes sufficient to sustain high-density residential development, the town shall investigate the feasibility of incorporating residential development into its plans for the project, including absorption, marketability, highest and best use of the land, availability of adequate infrastructure, facilities, and public service, and compatibility with the project as constituted. And if residential development is determined feasible, the town shall employ reasonable efforts to incorporate residential options in this project. Prior to me reading that, have you ever been aware of that provision of the Disposition and Development Agreement?
No, sir.
Have you ever had anybody other than counsel advise you about those provisions of the Disposition and Development Agreement?
No, sir.
What efforts have you or anyone else at the town made
Objection.
to...
She can't speak for anybody else.
Sure she can. What efforts have you or anyone else in the town, to your knowledge, made as to whether or not what the town has done to comply with the provision of the disposition and development agreement that I just read to you?
Objection.
Go ahead, you may answer.
Well, there's 145
Excuse me, just a minute.
townhomes there.
Mr. Maloney, when I interpose an objection, it's not for you to tell my witness whether she can still answer.
Actually, it is.
No, it is not.
We'll continue. Now, what efforts have you or anyone else at the town, to your knowledge, made to comply with that provision of the disposition and development agreement?
There are 145 townhomes, which are residential.
Anything else?
In place. Not that I know of.
What efforts have you or anyone else in the town made to determine the absorption rates as provided for in the disposition and development agreement, the analysis of absorption?
Objection. Those are compound questions. I ask counsel to separate whether the witness knows or whether anyone else knows.
I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
First of all, let's talk about you. With respect to you, what efforts have you as council member or mayor done to determine absorption levels as part of any analysis of the feasibility of residential development?
I personally was only part of the council when an economic impact study was completed by, I believe, Sage Group or something to that effect.
You're talking about the study done by Arnie Basu at Sage?
Apparently, yes.
Have you ever read that study?
Cover to cover, no, sir.
Have you read any part of that study?
No, the high points were reviewed and made available in a public meeting where it was just referenced, I'm sure.
And who did that, made the high points available in a public meeting?
Would have been discussed or referenced in a town council meeting by the former mayor.
All right, so other than hearing a summary of it discussed...
No, I'm not sure that it was a summary. I'm just saying that it was made known that one was completed.
All right, thank you for that clarification. So you believe there was a discussion at a meeting of the town council when you were a council member, but you're not sure as to the extent of that discussion. Is that correct?
That is an accurate statement, yeah.
All right.
Accurate summary of my statement.
All right. And as far as accurate summaries, are you aware of whether or not that presentation at the town council meeting when you were a council member even included a summary of the Sage report?
Objection.
As I mentioned, I have no specific memory of the discussion, just that it was brought to the attention of the council that the Sage Group did complete an economic impact study on the existing plan for development,
All right.
redevelopment, and development.
So other than the council being advised as to the existence of the study, to your recollection, was the council at any time, either when you were mayor or council member, ever advised as to the contents or findings or recommendations of that study?
Not to my recollection. Doesn't mean that it didn't happen. I just really don't have any memory of any of that.
Sitting here today, do you have any recollection whatsoever as to anything that the Sage report said or did not say?
I do not.
At any point during your service as mayor of the town, have you had occasion to consult, read, or otherwise obtain information about the Sage report?
No, sir.
Do you know whether or not the Sage report includes any discussion of absorption rates?
No, sir.
Do you know whether or not the Sage report includes any discussion of marketability of the Warfield property?
Only to the extent that it is regarding the existing plan. But the outcomes of that study I'm not familiar with.
All right, so whether it specifically addressed marketability, you don't know one way or the other. Is that correct? All right. And do you know whether or not the Sage report dealt with the highest and best use of the Warfield property?
Again, sir?
Do you know whether or not the Sage report dealt with, considered, or examined the highest and best use of the Warfield property?
No, sir.
Do you know whether or not the SAGE report considered the availability of adequate infrastructure, facilities, and public services for the Warfield property?
No, sir.
Do you know whether or not the SAGE report dealt with the compatibility of the project as constituted with overall potential residential development?
No, sir.
Now, with respect to your service as council member and actually let's break this down. Let's talk about your service as mayor.
Okay.
During the time that you have been mayor, did you at any time make any efforts to determine what the absorption rates were for residential development for the Warfield project?
No, sir.
Did you at any time while you were mayor make any efforts to determine the marketability of the Warfield project?
No, sir.
Did you at any time when you were mayor make any efforts to determine the highest and best use of the Warfield property?
No, sir.
Did you as mayor make any efforts to determine the availability of adequate infrastructure, facilities, and public services for the Warfield project?
No, not formally.
Well, I'm talking about formally or informally. Did you do anything like that?
When you say public services, are you referring to what?
Sure, anything that would serve it. Trash, refuge, police services, fire and rescue, anything that might be relevant to the project.
No, I would say no.
Did you, as mayor, do anything during your service as mayor, do anything to determine whether or not any proposed residential development for the Warfield project is compatible with the overall project?
You'll have to repeat that. I'm sorry.
Can you read the question back to the witness, please?
Did you as mayor do anything during your service as mayor, do anything to determine whether or not any proposed residential development for the Warfield project is compatible with the overall project?
A confusing question. I'm sorry. Can you rephrase it?
I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
What efforts, if any, did you make as the mayor to determine whether any residential development proposed for Warfield was compatible with the overall Warfield development?
Outside of the 145 townhomes that was agreed to, when you say overarching development plan, the 145 townhomes is compatible with that.
Anything else besides that?
No, sir. I believe I'm answering the question to the best of my ability. I'm not sure I understand any further what you're asking.
Did you make any efforts as mayor to determine whether or not residential development at Warfield would be compatible with the 2030 comprehensive plan?
If the residential development is compatible with the existing residential the existing residential component of the plan?
No, the residential development that was proposed by Warfield.
Oh, the new proposal of residential development
Yes.
was compatible with our
Yes.
2030
Yes.
comprehensive plan. You're asking me if I've done any research to determine if it was compatible with the 2030 plan?
Yes.
I don't think that I linked those two things together, no.
Was the residential development that was proposed by Warfield to the town and considered by the Planning Commission and rejected, was that residential development consistent with and compatible with the 2030 comprehensive plan?
I don't know that I can answer that question. I don't know if it is or is not.
Have you ever made any effort to determine whether or not it was consistent with the 2030 comprehensive plan?
No, I have not.
Have you ever read the 2030 Comprehensive Plan?
Yes, sir.
All right. With respect to, now I'm going to ask you the same questions with respect to the town. And when I'm referring to the town, I'm talking about either the mayor and council as a whole, or the planning commission, or the town staff, or any other agent, officer, or contractor of the town charged with responsibility. So we're talking about the town collectively and through its various constituent parts, okay? Now, my question is specifically this, and I'm asking you now about the residential development that was proposed by Warfield that was rejected by the Planning Commission. You're familiar with that, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. With respect to that residential development, did the town ever examine the absorption rates for the project in connection with that proposed residential development?
Objection. So I want to be clear for the record. This witness, you did not ask for a corporate designee deposition. This witness hasn't been proffered as a corporate designee, so I will allow her to answer to the extent she has knowledge, but without waiving my objection to any attempt by the defendants to use this witness as a corporate designee.
We're not attempting in any way to use her as a corporate designee, and we'll be noting a corporate designee designation and deposition separately.
Okay.
These questions are only as to what she knows and doesn't know.
That's fine.
Excuse me, I'm going to clear my throat before I blow your ears out there.
Okay. Now, once again, you understand what we're talking about when I talk about the town. And
I
you
do.
understand what I'm talking about when we're talking about residential development proposed by Warfield.
I do.
All right. Did the town at any time consider the absorption rates associated with the proposed residential development for Warfield that was proposed by Warfield?
I can't speak to what anyone else has done.
Are you aware of it ever happening?
I am unaware.
All right. And did you ever do it?
No, sir.
Did you ever ask anyone to consider the absorption rates?
No, sir.
All right. Did the town ever make any efforts to evaluate and analyze or understand the marketability of the residential development that was proposed by Warfield and rejected by the Planning Commission?
Not that I'm aware of.
Did you ever make any efforts to determine that?
Not at all.
Did the town ever make any efforts in conjunction with its consideration of the residential development at Warfield to consider the highest and best use of the Warfield property?
To my knowledge, outside of me being able to answer on my own behalf, which I believe I already have, no. I'm unaware otherwise.
In considering the proposed Warfield development that was rejected by the Planning Commission, did the town ever evaluate the availability of adequate infrastructure, facilities, and public services to service the proposed residential development?
I presume so, but I'm not sure.
Well, when you say presume so, sitting here today, do you have any specific knowledge of any action that was done to do that?
Only that I know that applications brought forth to the Planning Commission for certain types of applications require determination of adequate facilities.
Did you yourself ever make any effort to determine this?
No, sir.
Did you ever ask anyone else in the town, including the town staff, to make any type of analysis?
No, sir.
Did the town ever make any efforts to determine whether or not the residential development that was proposed by Warfield and rejected was feasible to be constructed?
I'm going to ask you to repeat it, but I think I already know my answer. If you could, I just want to make sure I understand.
Sure. Did the town ever make any efforts to determine if the residential development that was proposed by Warfield was feasible to be constructed?
Not to my knowledge.
All right. Did you ever make any efforts?
No, sir.
For all these questions that I've just asked you about feasibility, marketability, absorption, highest and best use, did, other than the retaining of the Arnie Bambassu and the Sage Company in 2017, did the town at any other time employ any consultants, advisors, assistants, or contractors to help analyze those factors as to any proposed or potential residential development at Warfield?
Not to my knowledge. We no longer own the property.
All right, I'm going to, you're claiming a reversionary interest in the property in this litigation, is that correct?
Objection. Again, this deposition is of the mayor personally. So if you want to rephrase the question to ask whether the town has taken that position, I will withdraw an objection.
Sure. The town is claims a reversionary interest in this property, correct?
A portion of it, yes.
And what portion is that?
Parcel D.
All right. Does the town claim a reversionary interest in any other part of the property other than parcel D?
It only applies to parcel D structures.
Does the town claim a reversionary interest in the portions of the property which are known as common elements and future phases?
I don't know what that means.
Are you familiar with those terms at all as far as the town is concerned and as far as the Warfield project is concerned?
Can you repeat the two things that I said I don't understand or that I'm not familiar with?
Sure.
Common places?
Common elements and
Common
future
elements.
phases.
No, sir.
Have you ever analyzed or had any discussion about whether the town has a reversionary interest in future phases or common elements of the Warfield project?
No.
Now I want to ask you about the contingency that appears in the 2002 Disposition and Development Agreement between the town and the state that provides that creates those responsibilities, quote, in the event that the Carroll County public water supply becomes sufficient to sustain high-density residential development. Do you strike that? Do you agree that the Carroll County public water supply is sufficient to sustain high-density residential development at the Warfield site?
Objection. You can answer.
Do I agree with that?
Yes.
That's above my pay grade.
Do you have any information or knowledge as to whether or not the Carroll County public water supply is sufficient to sustain high-density residential development on the site?
No, sir.
Have you ever made any effort to investigate about that?
I only know that it was stated that it was available at some point long before I was even a town resident, I'm sure.
Are you aware that the Warfield project was allocated 142,000 gallons per day of water and sewer capacity in 2015?
Objection leading.
We can lead all we want.
Go ahead. And I can object all I want.
Go ahead. You may answer.
Am I aware that they allocated 142,000 gallons of water
Yes.
per day? Well, you've just told me.
Prior to me just telling you that, were you aware of that?
I would have no recollection of the allocation of gallons per day of usage, no, sir.
Prior to this moment, did you have any knowledge whatsoever about water and sewer allocation being given to the Warfield project?
Only that it had been with respect to the disposition agreement, that had occurred prior to the purchase of the property from the town.
Now, the contingency provides that when the water supply becomes sufficient to sustain high-density residential development, that, quote, the town shall investigate the feasibility of incorporating residential development into its plans for the project, including absorption, marketability, highest and best use of the land, availability of adequate infrastructure, facilities, and public services, and compatibility with the project as then constituted. Are you aware of anything that the town has done since the water was allocated to that would sustain high-density residential development to investigate those things?
I'm not sure what would be considered high density. I know that there was negotiations back and forth about increasing from 0 residential to, I think it was increased at least twice the numbers from 0 to the current 145 agreed to townhomes.
All right, but my question is a different one. I'm not asking you about negotiations to permit additional residential development. Mm-hmm. I'm asking you now about the town's duty to investigate that was provided in the 2002 Development and Disposition Agreement.
Objection.
After the water and after the water supply allocation was made to the Warfield project, what, if anything, did the town do that you were aware of to investigate those items that I just read to you, including the duty to investigate the feasibility of incorporating residential development into plans for the project, which would include absorption, marketability, highest and best use of the land, availability of adequate infrastructure, facilities, and public services, and compatibility with the project as then constituted.
Objection. That's a when did you stop beating your wife question. She's not going to acknowledge that there was any particular legal duty. You can ask her the factual question, but leave out the part about any duty or lack thereof.
No, my question is simply, the contract says the town shall investigate. Are you aware of anything the town did to investigate?
I joined the council in 2013, and I was on the council and was, if I had, the easiest way to say this is I was not appointed the town's representative to any kind of inner workings or discussions or negotiations with the prospective buyer.
All right, that's fair enough.
And I'm not aware of, to answer your question, as a result of what I just said, I'm unaware of those types of studies if done.
All right, but in your service as council member beginning in 2013 and as mayor more recently,
Sure.
you are not aware of anything the town has done after the 2015 allocation of water supply to investigate those items, are you?
No, I am not.
Okay. Now, are you aware of anything the town has done to investigate the feasibility of incorporating residential development into the plans other than the 144 units you referenced earlier?
No.
Now, the disposition and development agreement requires that the Warfield complex be developed in accordance with smart neighborhood protocols. Are you familiar with the state's smart neighborhood protocols?
Superficially.
When you say superficially, what is your awareness or understanding of what the smart neighborhood protocols contain and have contained since you became mayor?
Have contained or do contain since I become mayor?
Yes.
Or are you asking me what I know to be smart growth initiatives, and what does that have to do with... Read the question again, I'm sorry.
Sure, and I'll give you a little background for this.
That'd be great.
The 2002 Disposition and Development Agreement requires that the Warfield complex be developed in accordance with the Smart Neighborhood Protocols. My first question is, are you familiar with the Smart Neighborhood Protocols that have been in effect since 2017?
I am familiar superficially to the extent that I understand that smart growth protocols include... pretty redundant, I guess, and almost implied, but smart development, where a thoughtful approach to diversification of any particular development project or area or neighborhood be considered with respect to types of uses and sustainability and so on and so forth.
Anything else that you're aware of that is contained in the Smart Neighborhood Protocols other than what you've just articulated?
No, sir.
Have you reviewed, since you became mayor, have you read or reviewed the state's Smart Neighborhood Protocols?
No, sir.
When the Warfield project submitted the proposed Warfield development, including the residential development, did you or anyone else in the town, to your knowledge, review that proposal to see if it was consistent with or advanced the Smart Neighborhood Protocols?
Objection. You have mischaracterized the submission by Warfield, which was a request for rezoning. It wasn't a development proposal.
Well, that's a distinction without a difference, but I'll rephrase the question. I am asking you now about the proposal submitted by Warfield, which included residential development, that was rejected by the Planning Commission. You familiar with that?
I'm familiar with the zoning text amendment that was submitted, yes.
All right, and you understand that text amendment would have authorized and permitted certain developments at Warfield, including residential development, correct?
Yes, sir.
And have you at any time during the town's consideration of that request done anything to determine whether or not that proposal was consistent with or advanced the state's smart neighborhood protocols?
Objection. You can.
Thank you. No, sir, I'm not. Again, it was an application for a zoning text amendment.
Are you familiar with anything that anyone else in the town did, including the Planning Commission, to consider whether or not that proposal advanced the state's smart neighborhood protocols?
I was not part of the Planning Commission's review process, so I don't know what they may have done, but I can speak for myself and for the council, and the answer is no.
All right, and you were present at some meetings of the Planning Commission, correct?
1, 2, yes.
All right, now, and with respect to the town's own vision while you've been mayor of what development should occur at the Warfield site, have you or anyone else at the town consulted with or analyzed the smart neighborhood protocols to see what would be required under those protocols?
Again, if you could separate the question.
Sure. While you've been mayor, in terms of your own vision for what should occur at the Warfield property, and I'm talking about independent of anything that Warfield itself proposed, with respect to your own vision or your own view of what ought to be developed at the Warfield property, have you ever consulted with or analyzed the requirements of the smart neighborhood protocols to determine what would fit in or be required for a future development of the property?
No, sir.
Has anyone else at the town, to your knowledge, ever analyzed or reviewed the smart neighborhood protocols to see what they would require as far as the future development of the property?
No, sir.
Did you yourself?
I don't mean to interrupt. Could we go off the record for 1 second?
Sure.
Time now is 11:04. We are going off the record. The time now is 11:16. We are back on the record.
So, is it a fair statement that as mayor, you did not support the text amendment that was proposed by Warfield for the Warfield site?
I did not support it.
Yes.
There were portions of it I wasn't a fan of, yeah.
All right, well, you opposed and made no secret of the fact that you opposed the text amendment in totality. Is that correct?
I mean, I had more issue with parts of it than others, but I was not in support of it, no.
And what portions of it were you particularly opposed to?
The increased density of residential.
All right, and why were you, and what did you understand that increased density to be?
My understanding was that a zoning text amendment, an approved zoning text amendment as written, would allow for nearly a 100% residential development of the greenfield or the empty parcels.
All right, and how many units would that be?
Well, how many do they propose, or
Yes.
Yeah, well, the increased density would allow for 2 per acre, go from 2 per acre to 6.5 per acre. So, I mean, I really don't recall what that number adds up to, but you could do the math with me if we wanted to. It's a couple hundred.
And why were you opposed to that increase in residential density?
I wasn't as much opposed to the increase in residential density. I was more opposed and remain opposed to the loss of opportunity for any alternative.
All right, so is it your testimony that you yourself, speaking as the mayor, do not oppose the increase in residential development? What your real opposition is to any alternatives that could be constructed on that parcel in lieu of the residential development?
I was just going to say, I feel like you may have actually just you can repeat it. I think I know what you were trying to do was summarize what I said, but I don't think you just did.
All right, and I'm not trying to put words in
I
your
know you're
mouth.
not, but I think it
Okay.
was an accident that you did that.
All right, let's break this down
Yeah.
so we don't have any confusion on the record.
Cool.
As I understand what you're saying is you oppose the residential development because of alternatives that it precluded.
Yes.
All right, so is it your testimony that you have no particular opposition to the residential development itself other than the fact that it would displace other forms of development?
Objection. Can you? I'll leave it. If the witness can.
I mean, I
answer
just
it.
think it's an incredibly broad question. I mean, I've already stated what you're asking to,
Well,
to restate it again.
Let me
I'm
break it down
afraid.
this way.
Sure.
Let's assume for a moment, hypothetically, that there was no other potential forms of development that could be constructed at that site. If that were the case, would you oppose the residential development?
Objection.
Yeah, I mean, that's like,
Go ahead.
I can't answer that question.
All right.
Because I don't know that to be the case. And
Is-
I'm not, yeah, go ahead.
Is there anything about the residential density itself, as opposed to the alternatives, that you oppose?
As opposed to the alternatives that
I'm not. Yeah, you've already told us that
Yes, sir.
your major concern is that it precluded other forms of development.
Yes.
And now I'm asking you a more narrow question, which is this. Is there anything about the increase in density of the residential development itself that you oppose or are against?
I have concerns related to it.
And what are those concerns?
I have concerns related to how that affects our schooling, our crowdedness.
School capacity?
Yes, sir.
Anything else?
I mean, I question perhaps other services, but my greatest concern is school capacity.
What other services do you question?
Well, I question them only because I it's the unknown with respect to see, we're drifting away from your original question, which was about the zoning text amendment and the the potential for increased density related to that an approved text amendment as written. And my response had to do with the potential for the entire development to be, the majority of the development or new development, new construction to be purely residential. And if that is truly what we are still speaking about, then I would say my only concern would be a overcrowding of our schools given current circumstances and projected development that's already been approved.
Have you at any time reviewed the current enrollment and school capacity projections of the Carroll County Board of Education to determine how the Warfield proposed text amendment would impact that capacity in those projections?
I have seen projections, the most recent projections, and am aware of the schools in that would be fed by Sykesville residents, capacity being dangerously close currently and/or at capacity in some cases.
To your knowledge, has the Carroll County Board of Education expressed at any time any concerns about the school impacts and enrollment impacts of the proposed Warfield text amendment?
No, not directly.
Well, have they done so indirectly?
I mean, they have been discussing redistricting up to and including very recently.
With who?
With who? They have an entire committee putting together a plan and presented a plan to the commissioners.
All right, and who specifically, which human beings have you had discussions with?
I have not had discussions with any of those people.
Well, are you aware of any analysis or any comments that were ever provided by the Carroll County Board of Education or its staff concerning the impact of the Warfield project?
No, sir.
Let me finish the question.
Well, you had already asked, but go ahead.
For our court reporter, it's very important that I finish the question.
Yes, sir.
And then you answer it. Because if we talk over it, it makes her job very, very difficult.
Understood.
Okay.
I apologize.
So, are you familiar with any analysis, evaluation, comments, or concerns that were ever expressed by the Carroll County Board of Education or their staff concerning the impact of the Warfield, of the residential development proposed in the Warfield text amendment on school enrollment and school capacity?
And again, I believe you just asked that question, but if you didn't, the answer is still no.
Did you or anyone else in the town government, to your knowledge, perform any analysis or make any inquiries as to the impact of the residential development or potential impact of the residential development proposed in the text amendment upon school enrollment and school capacity?
Again, I feel like that there was a repeat question, but no. The answer is still no.
With respect to what development, residential development, would preclude, what development are you talking about?
The mixed-use development,
And when you use the phrase mixed use, what are you talking about?
a combination of various uses,
And which uses are those?
ranging from light industrial to retail to commercial, research, all of those listed in the current plan.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Have you yourself done any analysis or investigation or made any inquiry about the ability or the market that would exist for those uses? And let me be very clear, when I say market that would exist for those uses, I'm talking about users who would participate in either purchasing and developing the land, leasing the land, or lenders who would be willing to go at risk and make loans for those kind of developments. That's the kind of market demand I'm talking about, the existence of a market. Do you understand that?
I do understand that, and the answer is no. We are not the owners of the property.
All right, well, you need to wait till I finish the question before you
You just asked
answer.
if I understood.
All right, I'm asking you now if you understand the concept, okay, that I'm talking about. Concept I'm talking about is whether or not a market exists for those uses.
Objection asked.
And let me lay a foundation so we have a clean transcript for this. The market for those uses that we're talking about, when I refer to market, means whether or not there would be commercially responsible tenants who would enter into long-term leases for the property or who would purchase the property for those uses, and would include whether the existence or non-existence of lenders who would be willing to make commercially reasonable loans for that kind of development. That's what I'm talking about in terms of the existence of a market. All right. Mm-hmm. Have you yourself made any kind of inquiry or investigation as to whether or not there is any kind of market for light industrial on that site?
Objection. You can answer.
No, sir.
Have you yourself made any inquiry or investigation as to whether or not there is a market for any form of retail on that site?
Objection.
No, sir.
Have you yourself made any kind of investigation as to what kind of market exists or has existed for any kind of commercial uses at the site?
Objection.
No, sir.
Have you yourself made any kind of inquiry at all or any kind of investigation as to what kind of research uses, what kind of market exists for research uses at the site?
Objection.
No, sir. I have not made any inquiries or research.
Have you yourself made any kind of inquiry or any investigation into whether a market exists for any of the uses that you would prefer at the site?
I have not.
Has the town government or any contractor or agent or officer of the town at any time since you've become mayor made any inquiry, investigation, or evaluation as to whether or not there is a market for light industrial at the site?
Not to my knowledge.
Has the town government or any of its agents or contractors made any kind of inquiry, investigation, or evaluation as to whether there is any kind of market for the retail uses that you prefer at the site?
Objection, and I'm just, instead of objecting to every question, I'm just going to ask for a continuing objection on the grounds that this is not the corporate designee.
Sure. Have you or has the town government, including its agents, contractors, and officers, made any kind of inquiry, investigation, or evaluation as to whether or not a market even exists for the retail uses that you prefer at the site?
Not to my knowledge.
Has anyone in the town government or any agent or officer or contractor of the town government made any kind of inquiry, investigation, or evaluation as to whether or not a market even exists for the commercial uses that you prefer at the site?
Not to my knowledge.
Has anyone in the town government, including any officers, agents, or contractors of the town, made any kind of evaluation, investigation, or inquiry as to whether or not a market even exists for the research uses that you prefer at the site?
Not that I'm aware of.
Has anyone in the town government, any officer, agent, staff, or contractor, made any kind of inquiry, evaluation, or investigation as to whether or not a market exists for any of the uses that you prefer at the site?
Not that I'm aware of.
So, sitting here today as the mayor, you have no idea as to whether any of the uses whether a market even exists for any of the uses that you prefer at the site instead of residential development. Is that correct?
The first part of that question was what?
Sitting here as mayor,
Yeah.
you have no idea as to whether or not a market even exists for any of the uses that you prefer at the site instead of residential development.
I have no idea.
Right, you don't know whether a market exists or not, isn't that correct?
I wouldn't say I have no idea, but I've not done any formal. I've answered all of your questions, so you know the answers to the fact that I've not done formal research. No, I have not made any investigations or asked any, as you put it, representatives to conduct formal investigations or studies.
Sitting here today, do you have any reasonable basis to conclude that or believe that there's a reasonable prospect that a market exists for the uses that you prefer at the Warfield site?
Just given the fact that there are 3 businesses out there in 3 separate buildings now.
Anything else?
No.
And what do you know about the 3 businesses that are out there now?
What kind of a... that's a very broad question.
What do you know about what they are and how many people they employ and how long their lease agreements are?
I have no idea about their lease agreements, sir.
What do you know about how many people they employ and what their business prospects are?
I've received a tour in each one of the buildings by all of the business owners.
Would you agree that there has been a substantial disruption of the retail and commercial market as a result of the worldwide pandemic?
Objection.
Yeah, a result where? Worldwide?
Yes.
Across the country? I can't speak to that.
All right. Do you acknowledge that the market for commercial and retail has dramatically changed as a result of the pandemic?
Objection. You can answer.
Not as evidenced in Sykesville.
What changes in criteria or the town's vision, how, if at all, did the pandemic and its impact upon commercial and retail markets influence your thinking as to the future of the Warfield, future uses of the Warfield property?
The downtown Sykesville lost no businesses over the pandemic and increased and actually added 4. So obviously that's going to affect my perspective from a local perspective with respect to retail and commercial.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Do you believe, what was your belief and what is your belief as to how the worldwide pandemic has influenced lending for commercial and retail usage and development?
I wouldn't be able
Objection.
to
This witness
speak to
cannot
that.
answer that question.
Go ahead.
I wouldn't be able to speak to that.
Have you made any inquiry or evaluation or done any investigation as to how the pandemic impacted lending for commercial and retail development?
No, sir.
Do you understand that a development cannot proceed unless there is a lending market that exists for it?
Objection. That's testimony.
I
Objection. Rephrase the question.
I'm not going to rephrase the question.
Then you'll need to repeat it.
All right, do you understand the question?
You'll need to repeat it, sir.
Do you understand the question?
If I understood it, I wouldn't ask you to repeat it. So please
All
repeat
right,
it.
can you read the question back, please?
Do you understand that a development cannot proceed unless there is a lending market that exists for it?
My short answer is, if a developer requires lending, then I would assume that would make it difficult, yes. If there isn't a market for lending.
Do you understand, what is your understanding about the way development, large-scale development works?
Objection.
Do you believe, is it your personal belief that most developments require lending or that they finance their development with cash?
Objection.
Do you have any knowledge about that?
I would assume that depending on the size of a development and the coffers of the developer or the property owner, those two things would affect that.
How about Warfield? Do you have any knowledge as to whether or not it would be even feasible to proceed with development at Warfield unless there was a substantial commitment by an institutional lender?
Objection.
I have no idea what the property owner's financials look like.
What investigation, if any, did you make as mayor to determine what kind of development would be financeable and supported by the institutional lending market?
None.
What effort did the town make at any time to determine what kind of development could be financed and supported by the institutional lending market?
None that I'm aware of.
The town assumed, you understand the town assumed control of the Warfield property from the state in the disposition and development agreement of 2002 to 2014. You understand, in 2002. Do you understand that that's when the town assumed control of development?
In 2002, but what are you saying? You mean
Well,
held it
I'll
until
rephrase
2014?
I'll rephrase the
Yes,
question.
please.
You understood that in 2002 the town assumed control of the property from the state under the disposition and development agreement. Do you understand that?
I'm aware of that, yes.
How long have you been a resident of Sykesville?
Since 2005.
All right. I'm going to ask you about the period from 2002 until 2014 when there was April of 2014 when there was a purchase and sale agreement. And I'm going to ask you, are you aware as a citizen and then later as a public official because you became a council member of any development that the town itself successfully obtained or pursued during that period of time from 2002 until April of 2014?
Objection to the extent that the question encompasses a period of time before this witness lived in the town.
Go ahead, you may answer.
Well, along those lines, I would have, retrospectively, I don't know of any, but I certainly wasn't there to be aware of that.
Well, when you became a member of the council, which was prior to 2014,
Yes.
had there been any development that the town had the town successfully developed anything on the Warfield property?
Not developed, no.
Had the town successfully accomplished anything on the Warfield property prior to that time? In other words, from 2012 and from 2002 to 2014, that you are aware of?
When you say successfully accomplished anything, or
Yes.
or
Done anything to advance the development?
there was another interested party that I am aware of. And this would be a guess on the year because, again, it preceded my tenure. I understand that there was an interested party prior to the housing boom bubble breaking in 2008. Outside of that, I can't speak to anything else.
And who was that interested party?
As I just mentioned, sir, I have no idea.
And
I am only aware that there was one.
And is that a prospective party that considered coming from Warfield but ultimately did not?
Coming from Warfield?
Coming to Warfield.
As I understand it.
All right, but they never actually came to Warfield or developed anything at Warfield, correct?
No. As I said, things kind of went up in smoke as most of potential development did in 2007 and 8.
All right. So it's a fact, is it not, that during the 12 years that the town had exclusive control of the Warfield property, that it developed nothing?
That is false.
Well, what was developed there in those 12 years?
Again, you say developed, but no new construction, but the restoration and reuse of 3 buildings took place.
All right, so let's break that down.
And one of them before, ahead of this other interested party coming along.
All right, let's break that down then.
Sure.
So it's a fact, is it not, that in the 12 years from when the town acquired the property from the state until 2014, when the purchase and sale agreement was entered into, that there was no new construction at all at Warfield in those 12 years, correct?
That is correct, sir. If
right.
we're speaking of new construction outside of redeveloping.
And I'm going to ask you about redevelopment
Great,
next.
sure.
All right. Why was the town unable to obtain any new construction at all in that 12-year period?
I don't know.
Have you done any investigation into the failure of the town to obtain any new construction during that 12-year period?
I'm not sure that we've established there's been a failure.
Well, I think we just did. Didn't you just testify that as far as new construction, that there was in fact no new construction during that 12-year period?
There's been no new construction, but I wouldn't say there was a failure. I'm not sure. I'd have to speak to that. Would speak to effort versus accomplishment, and I can't speak to either of those things.
Well, I'm asking you about results, not effort. My question is, in terms of results, we can agree, because it's a matter of fact, that there was no new construction on the Warfield site from 2012 to 2002 until 2014, correct?
We can agree to that, yes.
All right. Have you done, as mayor, any investigation into why the town was not successful in obtaining any new construction during the 12 years it controlled the site from 2002 to 2014?
No, sir.
What makes you, now that the town is seeking reversion, what makes you think the town will be any more successful in terms of obtaining new construction than it was during that 12-year period?
Objection.
Go ahead, you may answer.
Well, because those are mutually exclusive entities. Those are mutually exclusive constructs.
Well, my question is, given the town's failure over that 12-year period, what makes you think the town would be any more successful in obtaining new construction if it were to obtain the reversion of the property?
Objection.
Well, because the reversion of the property is specific to the historic site and is not inclusive of new construction.
So in other words, you believe the town will be more successful with renovation as opposed to new construction. Is it right?
I would believe that the concern on the part of the town is stabilization of the buildings.
Is the town have any other concern other than stabilization of the buildings?
Objection. Again, this is not the corporate designee.
Well, and it's also just like the broadest type of question. I would ask that you be more specific.
Sure. Do you as mayor have any other concerns other than the stabilization of the buildings?
I have billions of concerns with respect to being mayor. Most of them have nothing to do with the Warfield property.
All right, well, I'm asking about the Warfield property, and let's be specific.
Please.
Do you have any other concerns that motivate your desire for reversion of the Warfield property other than the stabilization of the buildings?
Objection to your reference to the Warfield property, which is broader than the parcel D property that the witness has already testified is the subject of the reversion.
All right, go ahead, you may answer.
So specific to the historic property and the reversion thereof?
Yes.
That is my greatest concern, stabilization.
Do you have any other concerns other than that?
It's like the foundation of anything that can happen. The buildings must be stabilized. So no, that's my concern.
Are you familiar with the state's catalytic revitalization tax credit?
Indeed, sir.
And how are you familiar with that?
How am I?
Yes.
I don't understand the question. How am I familiar
How did
with
you
it?
first become familiar with it?
Oh, Mr. McLeaf.
All right. Are you aware that Mr. McLeaf and Warfield were the principal drivers behind the enactment of the legislation which created the tax credit?
Very much so.
All right. Do you understand that the General Assembly created the catalytic revitalization tax credit with Warfield in mind?
Objection.
Go ahead.
I'm aware that previously owned state properties is included in the verbiage of the bill.
And do you understand that Warfield was a motivator in seeking and obtaining the passage of that legislation?
Objection. This witness cannot testify about the motivation of the General Assembly.
Go ahead.
I can't.
All right. Well, what's your belief as to what factor Warfield played in the passage of the bill?
Objection.
I can't speak to that.
All right. So you have no idea. Is that correct?
I can't speak to their motivation, sir, no.
All right. But taking aside their motivation, do you understand that Warfield was identified as a principal beneficiary of the passage of the tax credit?
Yes, sir.
All right. Do you believe that the catalytic revitalization tax credit is essential for the feasibility of the Warfield project?
Objection.
I can't speak to that.
Do you have any understanding as to the importance of the revitalization tax credit to the successful development of Warfield?
On the whole, if it's to be a completion of all the buildings at one time, yes, sir.
Are you familiar with the effort of Warfield's principals to secure state grant fundings to preserve the historic buildings at Warfield?
Objection.
I am not.
All right, so sitting here today, is this the first time you have heard about the concept that Warfield's principals were active in obtaining state grant funds from the Department of Housing and Community Development?
That's
No,
a
sir, it's
different
not.
question.
Yeah, it's not the first time I've heard of that, but that wasn't your question.
All right. Are you familiar with the three grants of $750,000 each, totaling $2.25 million that were awarded by Secretary Holt, in this case, to the town?
Objection.
No, I'm not aware of that.
Are you aware of the town obtaining any grant funding from the Department of Housing and Community Development?
I am.
Objection.
You
asked it-
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm asking another question now.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what was...
I have a continuing objection because you have characterized on the one hand that it is a grant from the secretary, and then you've characterized it as a grant from DHCD, and you haven't
the
even
town.
and you
Sorry.
and you haven't established whether it came from, whether DHCD had the authority to make any grant, whether it came from the state, any of the foundation for the question.
Well, let's make it really clear that a questioner in a deposition has no obligation to establish any foundation for anything. Now, with respect to the funds that the town received from the Department of Housing and Community Development, what funds were they?
Well, let's step back if you wouldn't mind.
Sure.
You asked me a question a moment ago as to whether or not I was aware of DHCD funding in the amount of $2.25 million to the town.
All right, but I'm now asking you a different question.
And that answer was no.
All right, I'm asking you a different question, which is, what funds did the town receive from DHCD?
For
anything, since you've been mayor.
we have received facade improvement grant funding.
Okay.
We have received since I was mayor, that would be it.
Did you, and how much was that?
I believe we get $20,000, $50,000 each clip every 2 years.
Did you ever receive funding in the amount of approximately $750,000 from the state?
We applied for DHCD Strategic Demolition Grant in 2019 on behalf of the Warfield project.
Okay.
And that was awarded in 2020, I guess, is my guess. Don't hold me to that. That would make sense to me, though.
And when you say on behalf of the Warfield project, what do you mean by that?
The grant was written for the purposes of stabilization and preservation of the historic structures.
All right.
At Warfield.
And did the town support that?
Very much so.
All right. And what happened to that grant?
It was awarded and not spent.
All right. Well, where did the money end up going?
There's lots of steps in between there. If
Okay.
you'd like.
Sure.
You probably are aware, though.
Sure. Well, where did I'm asking you about the end result.
Sure.
Where did that $750,000 end up?
Back to the town.
All right. And when you say back to the town, it was never originally awarded to the town for any purpose.
Okay, so now you're splitting my semantics, but yes, it came to the town, even though the town was, when I said back to the town, I meant the town was the one that had written the application.
All right. And when they say it went back to the town, for what purpose was it given, quote, back to the town?
Based on our use of it, the planned use for the money. Once it was brought to our attention that they were afraid that it was just going to, they didn't want it to just go away. They wanted it to be awarded and used.
And who told you that?
The state, DHCD.
When you say the state,
Yeah.
who at DHCD told you that?
I did not have those conversations.
Who had those conversations?
Staff.
Which staff?
My town manager.
All right. Is that Mr. Cosentini?
Yes, sir.
The man who's sitting here today?
Yes, sir.
And who did he have those conversations with?
Staff, I don't know. DHCD staff, and I don't know who.
All right. And what did the town do with that $750,000?
We have provisions for it in our budget to do stabilization and strategic demolition of town-owned property
Which property?
in downtown Sykesville.
Has the town spent that money yet?
A portion of it for engineering.
How much?
I don't know.
How much is left?
I don't know.
All right. Why hasn't the town spent all of it yet?
I think because we've got a lot going on.
And so you've got a lot going on that
Yeah.
precluded the town from spending that?
No, didn't preclude it from spending it. It's just, things move slowly.
When does the town reasonably anticipate that it will spend the balance of the $750,000?
I would expect by the end of next fiscal year. But, I don't know.
When you say the end of the next fiscal year, that would be June 30th of 2025. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, with respect to the conversion of that grant from a Warfield demolition grant to something the town was using for another purpose, how did that come about?
How did that come about?
Right.
Well, I think ultimately the decision was made by the Department of Housing and Community Development to, this is a loaded question. This is a very loaded question. How did it come about is probably a 20-minute answer, but you haven't really asked any specific questions about.
Well, I'd like your version. I don't care whether it's 1 minute or 20, as to how this started off as a demolition grant for Warfield and turned into a grant that the town was going to use for another purpose completely unrelated to Warfield.
Well, to my knowledge, the state.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, would you read that back? Because the very first part of that question I missed. How did it start?
You said, well, I'd like your version, I don't care if it's 1 minute or 20 minutes, as to how this started off as a demolition grant for Warfield and turned into a grant that the town was going to use for another purpose completely unrelated to Warfield.
Objection to the characterization of demolition.
Go ahead.
To my knowledge, the DHCD staff reached out to the town.
And who on the DHCD staff did that?
I wished I knew, sir.
Is it a fair characterization in your mind that Secretary Holt converted the grant to the town as a gesture of good faith to try to get the town to be more cooperative on the Warfield project?
Objection.
I hope that wasn't the intention or the motivation behind that.
And why do you hope that that wasn't the intention or motivation behind that?
Just because I had assumed that my assumption remains that the Department of Housing and Community Development are in favor of revitalization and economic development and community development, and no matter how the money that was awarded to the town on behalf of a project that they obviously had realized wasn't moving forward with respect to the spending of that money, that they would like to see the money spent in the way that in keeping with their mission and vision, the department's mission of community development.
At any time did you, as mayor, or anyone in the town, to your knowledge, work with Warfield and to make any efforts to obtain tax funding or grant funding that might help close the gap between the cost and the value of restoring the existing buildings at Warfield?
No.
And why didn't you work with Warfield on those efforts?
Objection.
I'm not sure I was, as a town, we were invited to do so.
Isn't it true that in open council meetings you publicly opposed Warfield obtaining grants for that purpose?
No, I publicly opposed Warfield obtaining grants to, if not to be used for the stabilization and preservation of the buildings.
In other words, for any other purpose, you oppose any grants to Warfield that did not involve stabilization of the existing buildings. Is that correct?
No.
Objection.
No. Sorry.
Well, I want you to characterize what you opposed in public.
I did publicly characterize why I opposed those things.
All right.
And they were public, so they're available.
All right, but I'm asking you, what grant funding that Warfield was seeking did you oppose in public?
No, sir. I didn't oppose grant funding that they were seeking. I opposed the use of the grant funding that was awarded for anything other. I opposed the use of it that had already been awarded. The use of it for anything other than the preservation and stabilization of the buildings.
And why did you oppose the use of grant funding for anything other than the stabilization of the buildings?
Because my belief then, and my continued belief, is that the value of the buildings in the eyes of a developer or potential user is greatly diminished by the lack of stabilization and making them at least visually palatable to someone who may be interested in redeveloping one or more of the buildings.
So if that was your belief, what, if anything, did you do as mayor to assist Warfield to obtain any state funding to stabilize or preserve the historic buildings?
We wrote, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
We wrote, with the assistance of town staff, wrote the application for the grant in which you are speaking.
Anything else?
Not to my knowledge, sir.
After that grant was converted for the town to use for purposes other than Warfield? Did you or anyone else in the town do anything to assist Warfield in obtaining state funding to preserve or stabilize the historic buildings?
There was actually a public meeting of the town council in 2020 where the request by the property owners to change the scope of work for the already awarded $750,000 from DHCD to change that scope of work from what had originally been written in the application, which was for the stabilization preservation of the buildings, to that of infrastructure, investment in infrastructure improvements. And it was passed.
Infrastructure at Warfield?
Yes, sir. I hope so. That's what we were talking about.
Isn't it a fact that the $750,000 that you are using on purposes other than Warfield was originally intended to stabilize and restore historic buildings at Warfield as well as other purposes?
Not to my knowledge, I believe it was primarily, if not solely, for the purposes. It was certainly to be used on parcel D. Outside of stabilization of the buildings or infrastructure over there, I'm unaware if it was directed for anything other than parcel D.
Is it your position that you believed that the original $750,000 that the town now has was intended only for stabilization and preservation or for other purposes?
As I just mentioned, I mean, I feel like you're asking me the question I just stated, so
Well, I
I'll say,
want to make sure we're clear here.
Yes, please. The answer to your question is, well, I'll just repeat what I just said because I believe that's what you just asked in a question form. To my knowledge, the the grant award of $750,000 from DHCD in 2019 was intended for use on the structures and on parcel D. The structures on parcel D and infrastructure on parcel D.
And what was your understanding as to why it was not actually used for that purpose?
I believe it had something to do with tax law.
Did it have to do with the interpretation of the United States tax code as it related to funds in escrow?
Objection.
I have no idea why we're talking about escrow right now. We're talking about the $750,000 that was provided through application.
Do you have any understanding as to what the tax issues that you just referenced are referring to?
Yes, and I only am intimately aware of them because of the property owner's request to change the scope of work from improvements and stabilization to the historic structures to infrastructure improvements.
And did they indicate that that request was motivated in part because of tax issues that had arisen?
Well, not arisen, but just tax laws.
All right. And what was your understanding, if you have one, as to what those tax issues are?
The way I recall it was explained by Mr. McLeaf during that meeting, which I just referenced in 2020, the public town council meeting, was that if the grant funds were to be used in the improvements of a depreciable item or a depreciable piece of property like the building, that it would be taxed at a high percentage, but that if it were to be used for infrastructure, it would not.
Do you have any reason to dispute that interpretation?
I have no reason to dispute it. I do not know tax code or tax law. I'm going by what I was told.
Did you or anyone else at the town do anything to investigate, interpret, or obtain advice as to whether or not that contention about the tax effects was valid or not?
Objection to the extent it calls for disclosure of consultations.
I don't want you to tell me anything a lawyer told you. I just want to know, what, if anything, did you or the town do to investigate whether or not the concerns expressed by Warfield about the tax consequences were valid?
I'm not sure of any that was done, but I can tell you that ultimately the meeting that followed that one, or maybe 2 meetings later, we revisited this topic and made a formal decision to change the scope of work so that the funding could be used on infrastructure rooted in the concern that it wouldn't be used otherwise.
What, if anything, did you do to assist Warfield in obtaining any tax credits for the property from the federal or state government?
None.
What, if anything, did the town do to assist Warfield, that you're aware of, to assist Warfield in obtaining any tax credits to develop the property from the federal or state government?
Nothing that I'm aware of.
And why did why did the town not do anything to assist Warfield in obtaining tax credits to help develop the property?
Objection.
I wouldn't know.
Well, were you asked to assist with the tax credits?
What are you speaking of?
Well, such as the catalytic tax credit for one.
I do know that the town was asked, the former mayor, the mayor at the time, was asked to testify on behalf of the legislation, and he did. He complied with agreed to do that and did so.
All right, but once the tax credit became law, what, if anything, did the town do that you were aware of to support the Warfield project getting awarded those tax credits?
I wouldn't know of anything.
Is there any reason the town did not assist Warfield with that?
Objection assumes a fact not an
Go ahead.
I don't know why we would not have done something that I don't know was necessary.
And you don't think the tax credits were necessary for the project?
No, that's not what I said. I said I do not know. The tax credits are not available until the work is done. Am I correct in that? That's my understanding.
Well, my question is a different one.
Okay.
My question is, what is your view as to whether the tax credits were and are necessary for the success of the project?
Objection. This witness can't answer that question.
Go ahead if you know.
No, I don't.
Have you made any effort to investigate how important or how critical the tax credits would be to the success of the Warfield project?
No, sir.
Has anyone in the town done any efforts to investigate or determine how important these tax credits would be, including the catalytic tax credit, to the success of the Warfield project?
Not that I'm aware of.
I'm going to show you what is marked as Exhibit Number 1, the Historic Town newsletter. Do you see this?
Yes.
And is this a newsletter that is distributed throughout the town?
I hope so.
All right. And you have your own column there, is that right?
Front page.
All right. And how often is the newsletter distributed to the town?
Quarterly.
And does it go to every town resident?
I hope so.
All right. And your column there says Stacy Link, Mayor.
Yep.
Is that personally prepared by you?
Do you mean the contents on this page?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, I want to ask you about, you have a section here on Warfield. Do you see that?
I do.
All right. I want to ask you about a specific section of this, which talks about these additional residential units are not inclusive of the previously approved 145 townhomes that make up Sykesville's newest neighborhood, Parkside.
Yes, sir.
Quote, this new proposal is in stark contrast to the original intent of the mixed-use project and the planned employment center zoning, new construction/infill development of commercial space, including a hotel and redevelopment of historic structures for a mixture of commercial uses such as office, retail, service, research, institutional, light industrial, hospitality, and recreational.
Yes, sir.
Did you draft that section of the newsletter?
As I mentioned, I wrote this newsletter entry as I do quarterly, and I took that verbiage right from the I guess what I've been calling the master plan, if you will, or the agreed to development plan at the time of sale.
And when you say master plan, are you saying that is the language from the purchase and sale agreement? Is that your testimony?
I'm suggesting that my testimony is that these uses are taken right from there.
When we talk about hospitality uses, what hospitality uses are those that you were referring to?
I would assume hotel.
All right. And is that the same as the hotel that is mentioned earlier? Is that correct?
The word is the same, yeah.
All right. And what investigation or evaluation or inquiry did you or anyone else for the town make as to whether or not a market exists at Warfield for a hotel?
So I feel like you've asked me this question already.
Not
The
about a
answer is-
hotel. Go ahead.
Okay. I haven't referenced any of that in this article.
All right. I'm not asking you now whether or not you referenced in the article.
Okay.
I'm asking you a separate question is, since you become mayor, what efforts did you or anyone else in the town that you're aware of make to investigate, evaluate, or determine whether or not there was even a market for a hotel at Warfield?
Objection. Asked and answered earlier in the deposition.
Has not been asked or answered. Go ahead.
I have done no official research. I am only aware of an interested hotel developer.
And who is that interested hotel developer?
I do not know.
Well, how did you become aware of them?
I'm just aware of the interest that was expressed.
And who expressed it?
I don't know.
Well, how did you become aware of it?
The broker,
And who's the broker?
Dennis Boyle.
And who is Dennis Boyle?
The broker.
Is he a friend of yours?
No, sir.
How do you know Dennis Boyle?
I know Dennis Boyle because Dennis Boyle was the broker for the Warfield development and also has done some brokering for the town.
And what, if anything, did Dennis Boyle tell you about an interest from any hotel developer for the Warfield project?
That there was an interested hotel developer.
Did he tell you anything about who it was?
No, sir.
Did he tell you anything about the financial capacity of that developer?
No, sir.
Did he tell you anything about what happened with that interest?
No, sir.
Did he complain at all about how Warfield had treated or considered this prospective hotel use?
No, sir.
Are you aware of Warfield ever not conducting due diligence or appropriately pursuing any potential development at Warfield?
Objection. You've asked this witness if she's aware of something that didn't happen that she wasn't even involved in. How can she possibly answer that?
I don't
question?
think you understand my question at all.
Well, rewrite it.
Sure. Since you become mayor, has Warfield not failed to do anything that you would consider reasonably necessary to attract development to the site?
Objection.
I don't know how I would answer that question.
Well, do you have any criticism of Warfield? Is there anything that you are aware of that you think Warfield should have done to attract development of any kind to the site?
I am unaware at the extent or lengths to which Warfield has gone to market development to the site.
All right, but my question is a different one. Are you aware of anything that Warfield failed to do or should have done to attract development to the site since you've become mayor?
I do not know the lengths to which they have gone, so I do not know. I can't critique it.
That's why. Do you have any criticisms of it?
I cannot critique their attempts to market the
All right, your
site.
reference in the newsletter also mentions recreational. What recreational uses were you referring to that you say were part of the original intent for Warfield?
What specific recreational uses?
Yes.
I don't know that I can speak to that.
All right, is there any market? I mean, recreational tends to be institutional or public or free to the public, correct?
Can tend to be, sure. Can be, doesn't have to be.
Are you aware of anything that Warfield should have done as far as recreational uses on the project?
No, sir, I'm not.
Now, with respect to the text amendment, what communications did you have at any time with members of the Planning Commission about the zoning text amendment?
None.
Is it your testimony that you never communicated in any way with any member of the Planning Commission about the Warfield text amendment at any time?
I can say that only in public forum, in mayor and town council meetings, with the liaison to the Planning Commission who sits on the town council, when he would report back to the town council.
Other than speaking to the liaison, is it your testimony that you have never communicated in any way with any individual member of the Planning Commission or the Planning Commission as a whole at any time about the Warfield zoning text amendment?
No, I have not.
At the meeting where you were present on January 24th, 2022, were you present at that time?
If that's the date, sir, I don't think I was there at January meeting, but that doesn't sound right.
How about the meeting that was the subject of the open meetings complaint? Are you familiar with that meeting?
Painfully aware, yes.
And when you say painfully aware, why is that?
Because I think you know the answer to that. I'm aware of the meeting, yes, sir.
At that meeting, did you
But I
have
don't
any-
remember the date, so that's why I say I don't know
All
that
right,
it was
well,
January
let's just
24th.
call it the meeting that was the subject of the open meetings complaint.
Okay.
At that meeting, did you have any communications with the members of the Planning Commission, individually or otherwise, about the Warfield zoning text amendment?
No.
Did you communicate with the individual members of the Planning Commission at all that evening?
No, except in the hallway when I came out of the bathroom and Mr. Enslow was in the hallway. I think he had also used the bathroom, and I looked at him and he looked at me, and I took a deep breath and he walked in.
Is it your testimony that at no time by phone, text, or in person you said anything or signaled anything to the members of the zoning the zoning commission?
I did not signal or speak to anyone at the Planning Commission that evening in the meeting, if that is your question. No.
Did you speak about the referral of the Warfield matter to the Planning Commission at the January 24th, 2022 council meeting?
Now we're talking about a council meeting on
Yes.
January 24th?
Yes.
Okay, you'll need to bring me up to speed.
Sure. You preside over the mayor and council meetings, isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
You
Probably.
And you recall that there was a meeting of the mayor and council when the zoning text amendment for Warfield was referred to the Planning Commission.
Oh, yes, that evening. Is that the date of that? Okay,
Yes.
sure, yeah. Mhm.
Yes. And at that time you stated that the Planning Commission was not going to be responsible for creating an equitable solution for the developers.
That is correct.
And what did you mean by that?
That it was not the responsibility of the Planning Commission to create a plan that was in keeping with the existing zone or that would require a zoning text amendment.
And you also directed the Planning Commission to just vote yes or no, up or down, on the proposed zoning text amendment. Isn't that correct?
No, I did not.
Did you make any statements on the record that night that the Planning Commission should simply vote yes or no on the zoning text amendment that was presented?
Objection. The record of that meeting speaks for itself. This witness can answer if she recalls.
I do not recall, but if you want to bring me up to speed on something and ask me something specifically, I'll see if I do recall.
Did you ever make any public statement to the effect that it was the job of the Planning Commission to either vote it up or down, but not to negotiate with the developer?
I'm quite sure that I said what you had first said about, I remember saying it's not the job of the Planning Commission to create for the developer or for the applicant an equitable solution.
And why is it not the job of the Planning Commission to work with the applicant to develop a solution that would be satisfactory to the government and satisfactory to the developer?
Objection. This witness can't possibly answer that question.
Go ahead.
I can't answer the question.
Well, why did you take that position that it was not the job of the Planning Commission to work with the developer to come up with an equitable solution here?
Because that is not the job of a Planning Commission.
And is it your view that in the planning process that the planning commissioners are not supposed to work cooperatively with the developer to try to find a equitable solution to the overall development plan?
Objection.
I never suggested and would never suggest that the Planning Commission not work cooperatively with an applicant for any reason.
Well, why did you say the Planning Commission was not going to be responsible for creating an equitable solution here?
Because it is not the job of the Planning Commission to create an application for the applicant.
Do you agree it's the job of the Planning Commission to work to create a resolution of the issues with the zoning text amendment that would become an equitable solution for both parties?
I believe it's the job of the Planning Commission to review applications through the eyes of the existing zoning and if whether or not the application is in keeping with the existing zone and yes or no to that question.
Since you've become mayor, I'd like you to listen to this question carefully.
Sure, I will.
Since you've become mayor, has the town ever engaged in any serious discussions or negotiations with the Warfield project and its principals over the scope of the project and what could be approved and not approved?
I have not been a part of any of that, no.
Has anyone in the town, to your knowledge, ever done that?
Not to my knowledge.
Has the staff ever done that?
I believe that our town manager, Joseph Cosentini, has been a big part of trying to advise the applicant as to what could even potentially become something that would be equitable.
Why have you not participated yourself in any negotiations with the developer as to what could be a consensus plan for Warfield?
Objection.
Well, if I may, while I was on the council, I always felt as though any and all negotiating, as you called it, that may have been taking place was happening between the then mayor and Warfield entities, and that I was in the dark or kept in the dark, whether it be intentionally or unintentionally. And I had decided and I've been conducting myself since becoming mayor in a fashion that would eliminate the opportunity for my council to be not completely informed, and that all conversations with the developer / property owner should happen in the public forum.
Well, why couldn't you negotiate with the developer and report to the council about that?
Because that's supposedly what was happening while I was on the council, and it's not effective, and it's not the job of the executive officer that I am to be holding negotiations behind closed doors with these developers or any others, and that's my constitution, and that's all I can say.
Is that why you have declined to negotiate with the developers on what could be an approvable plan for the future of Sykesville?
Objection.
What could be an approvable plan for
Yes,
the future
what
of
could
Sykesville?
what could be a consensus plan for the future of Sykesville that would be agreeable to the town and agreeable to the developers?
I'm not sure that I was ever invited to do such a large-scale, make such a large-scale decision with anyone, including the developers.
Well, did the developers, the principals, Mr. Conley, Mr. McLeaf, ever ask to meet with you to discuss what could be approved at Warfield?
I'm not sure that in the invitation to meet with them, it was specified that it would be for that specific reason. I was approached by Mr. Connolly on the evening of my inauguration. He attended the inauguration, and upon the disbursement of most of the people that attended the inauguration, Roger approached me and congratulated me and said, we really need to sit down and have a chat.
And so did you?
I was not contacted again by Mr. Connolly directly to have a chat.
Well, did Mr. McLeaf ever, or somebody else on behalf of the project, ever contact you?
Not directly, no.
Did they contact you indirectly?
They contacted the town.
All right, and did they ask to have a meeting with you?
I was told by staff that they asked to meet with me and staff, like not just me, I don't believe. I think it was with staff and me.
And did you decline to have such a meeting?
I did, because I said I wanted all and any conversations about this particular topic to occur in a public forum.
And have you consistently taken the position since you were inaugurated that you would not meet with the Warfield principals either with or without staff?
Correct, behind closed doors, except for one exception.
And what was that?
When I agreed to meet with Roger but not Steve.
And why did you agree to meet with Roger but not Steve?
Because I find my relationship with Steve and Steve's relationship with mine to have the potential to be contentious when we are in conversation about this topic.
And what do you attribute that to?
I do not know.
And so did you meet with Roger?
No, I did not, because Roger, as far as I understand and to my recollection, refused that meeting without Steve.
Did
To happen if Steve weren't there.
Did Roger tell you that?
That, I believe, was the communication with staff and was passed along to me. I have never spoken to Roger or Steve about meeting with them.
So is it a fair statement that you've never met with the principals of Warfield except for the meeting that was convened by Secretary Holt at the town hall?
That is correct.
And that would be true during your entire time as mayor?
Yes, sir.
When you ran for mayor, did you make any public statements or promises about the Warfield project?
Promises? No.
Did you make any public statements about the Warfield project?
Yes.
What statements did you make?
That I was running on a platform of transparency and accountability, and if that pertained to holding the Warfield developers accountable for lack of preservation, and holding them accountable to the contract of sale, that I would do that.
Did you state when you were running for mayor that you would seek reversion of the property back to the town?
No, I said that that was an option that was written within the contract of sale.
Did you state when you were running for mayor that you would pursue that option in the contract of sale to have the property reverted to control of the town?
I said that it was an option for the town to consider, and it would be an option. It would afford us the opportunity for accountability because we had that option in the contract, and then I was pleased that it had been incorporated into the contract without really much of my doing.
And did you state that that was an option that you preferred or would pursue?
No, I said I had hoped that they would invest the money into the stabilization of the buildings.
Now, at the meeting of the Planning Commission that was the subject of the open meetings complaint, you yourself sat in the gallery that night with council members Mark Dyer and Elizabeth Jorhoff. Is that correct?
No, her name is pronounced Guroff, and there was another member there as well.
Who was that?
The first meeting are we speaking of?
The one that was the subject of the open meetings complaint.
Is that, can you give me the date?
February the 7th, 2022.
I believe Anna Carter was there as well. Don't hold me to that, but there were two meetings, and she was there for one of them.
And why were you there?
I was there because I wanted to be there when the Warfield entities did their presentation, because I had hoped that they would do such a presentation for the council, and that was deferred that opportunity was deferred prior to our referring the application for review to the Planning Commission, and so I had hoped to see that presentation in person.
In the film of that meeting, you are seen interrupting Warfield Speaker Sean Davis while he was responding to a question from the Planning Commission. Mm-hmm. What did you say?
I don't know. You'll have to remind me what he said that I reacted to.
Why did you interrupt him?
I don't know. You'll have to remind me what he said.
So you have no recollection as to why you interrupted him?
I remember reacting and saying that it wasn't true what he had said, but I would like you to tell me if that is what you were referring to.
Did you text with any other council members during this meeting?
I did.
And what did you say?
Well, that's all a matter. I mean, I believe you have all those text messages. I really don't remember exactly the content of them. That was mostly just fodder.
Were you criticizing the Warfield project?
Objection. The texts speak for themselves. You can answer.
Again, I haven't reviewed those text messages. I don't recall the contents of them.
Have you had any conversations or communications with other property owners or prospective developers about being at Warfield?
I don't understand the question.
Have you ever talked to any private developers about Warfield, about what they think's going on, about whether they'd be interested in coming there, whether they'd be interested in working with the town on Warfield?
No, sir.
Have you ever talked to either Herman or Gossage about Warfield in any way?
Yes.
Let's start with Herman. When did you talk to Herman?
I talk to Jonathan quite frequently.
All right. Do you talk with him on that telephone, that number you gave us earlier?
No, we send smoke signals. Of course I use this phone.
All right. And how about Gossage?
Yes, sir.
All right. And when did you talk to Gossage about Warfield?
I don't know. Fred and I are also friends. I probably have have spoken to Fred on and off about Warfield for a couple of years, 3, 4, 5 years.
And how about Landron Asgari? Have you ever talked to Landron about Warfield?
I don't know that name.
Lauren Asgari.
Have I ever spoken to her about Warfield?
Yes.
Absolutely.
And what-
She's a property owner over there.
Okay. And when have you talked to her about Warfield?
When she and her business partner invited me over for a tour to their building, Alderson Loop.
All right, we're starting to run out of film here. What do we? How much do we have left?
2 minutes.
All right, so why don't we take our lunch break right now? How much time does everybody need for lunch?
Time now is 12:28. We are going off the record. This is the end of disc number 1.
I'm at anybody's, however much time you want. 45 minutes?